Hi, this is Professor Greg Smith at the College of William & Mary. I'm in the Department of Applied Science and the Neuroscience program at William & Mary, and one of the students of cellular biophysics and modeling asked for a little more information on the concepts of escape versus release dynamics. If you haven't seen the first video on central pattern generators that was uploaded last month, you might want to watch that one first. So the distinction between escape dynamics and release dynamics is easy to see in the phase plane. Remember, these are the phase planes for two identical reciprocally coupled inhibitory neurons. The straight nullcline is a slow recovery variable, and the cubic nullcline is the nullcline for the fast voltage variable. Now, the reason why there's two nullclines for voltage is that we need to keep track of whether a particular neuron is receiving inhibition or not. So the lower nullcline is the nullcline that is relevant for a neuron that is receiving inhibition from the other neuron that it's connected to. And so what you'll notice here, if I stop this movie, is that the blue neuron is on the lower nullcline, and the reason for that is because the green neuron is to the right of the dashed lines. So this is the green neuron being active, which implies that the blue neuron needs to be on the lower nullcline. Now, the reason why this is considered escape dynamics is simply that the blue neuron is able to escape the inhibition from the green neuron by passing underneath the knee of the inhibited voltage nullcline. So it's really the escape of the blue neuron, the escape of the silent neuron from inhibition by the active neuron that's causing the roles of the two neurons to exchange. Now on the right, the situation is a little bit different. Here, you actually see the active neuron timing out and becoming silent, and that's what allows the inhibited neuron to move from the lower inhibited nullcline to the uninhibited nullcline, and that is why the silent neuron is becoming active, because the active neuron, right, timed out and can only maintain its activity for so long because it falls off the top of the uninhibited voltage nullcline. Right? So the distinction between escape and release dynamics really has to do with the what is the precise reason why the silent neuron becomes active? Is it because it escapes the inhibition of the active neuron, or is it because it's released from inhibition by the active neuron? Now, the focus of this short video is on how these ideas play out in the situation where the reciprocally coupled inhibitory neurons express the low threshold calcium current IT. So both of these neurons in this picture are express the low threshold spike, and the most significant difference between these nullclines and the one that you saw before are that it's basically that the free nullcline is below the inhibited nullcline in this case. Inhibition raises the voltage nullcline here because H is the gating variable for an inward current. And think that through for yourself. In the previous case of nullclines that looked like the Morris-Lacar model, the gating variable W was an outward current, and so the inhibited nullcline was below the free nullcline. But here H is the gating variable for an inward current, so the inhibited nullcline is above the free nullcline. Now this configuration is, as an initial condition, is valid because the neuron A is active and neuron B is on the inhibited voltage nullcline. Conversely, neuron B is silent, so neuron A is on the free voltage nullcline. So it's It's a reasonable initial condition, and what's going to happen next in this situation is that A will simply drift down its null climb until it gets to the place where until it reaches the synaptic threshold, and at this point A is no longer active and B must move to the free null climb, and it does so like this. Okay, now at this point B is now active, and so A has to move on to the inhibited null climb. And now as time goes on, A will drift upwards and B will drift down the free voltage null climb like this. And at this point, the roles of the neuron A and B have sort of switched, and so this cycle will repeat. Now this would be considered a release mechanism because it was A is sort of stuck here and inhibited, and the reason why A will become active is because B crosses the threshold and becomes silent here. So the mechanism for the ending of the silent phase of the inhibited neuron is the timing out of the activity of the active neuron, and so this is a release dynamic. So in this example, the null climbs are positioned a bit differently, and this will be an illustration of escape dynamics in the context of two reciprocally coupled inhibitory neurons that express the low threshold calcium current IT. So let's just check that this position is a valid initial state. Neuron A is active, and so B needs to be on the inhibited null climb, and that's true. And neuron B is active, so neuron A needs to be on the inhibited null climb, and that's also true. So this is a valid initial condition, and we'll now watch this sort of play out. Both A and B are going to slide down the inhibited voltage null climb until neuron A here drops off the knee, and when it does so, it'll drop to here because it's still inhibited. B is currently active, right? But now A is silent, and so B needs to move to the free null climb. All right, so we've just gotten started here, and what's going to happen next is that A will drift up to this knee whilst B drifts down to here, and you can see that in this case A is now able to escape the inhibition of B in spite of the fact that B is still active. So A jumps up, B drops down. Now neuron A is no longer inhibited, so it moves up here, and the cycle repeats. So as I scroll through here, let me just say one more time that the reason why this is considered escape dynamics is because it's actually neuron A escaping the inhibition of neuron B that causes the two neurons to change roles. That escape is happening whilst the silent neuron is receiving inhibition, so we refer to it as an escape mechanism. So I hope that this video helps you in your preparations for the final exam, and feel free to ask me more questions, and I'll see you on Friday.